meaning they started kind of twisting the Torah. Everyone were in attainment. They, in perception, revelation, we're talking about the degrees of the first temple, when the people of Israel, Abraham's group, achieved their own end of correction, mochin dechaya. But they were connected to Babylon and had to also connect to them and correct them. And because they did not correct them, they started to decline. Again, how does it happen? The fact that that group came from Babylon, in Babylon, they were all tied together, connected. Meaning in each one, there was a big desire of the whole of Babylon. In each one, there was also a spark, as in the people who joined Abraham. But in some of them, the spark was above Babylon, and in some, Babylon was above the spark. That was the difference. But in the breaking of the vessels, everything was mixed, and everyone had both parts. Everyone in the world. Now, because if there weren't that part, then there would be no connection, nothing to talk about. It would be impossible to correct, ever. Now, the fact that the group connected around Abraham and it corrected itself. Once it corrected itself, it's like galut that have corrected themselves. The rest, their connection to Babylon was not corrected, and Babylon itself was not corrected. So with what can you correct Babylon? By, once they corrected the galut, all kinds of desires of Babylon began to surface in them. For food, sex, family, money, power, knowledge, everything that exists in this world, they had to elevate them for correction, but didn't do it. They didn't do it. They didn't work with it. You could ask why? Because they were only from galut, belonging only to galut, and they couldn't correct the achap. That's why the shattering was prepared, facilitated, and not the breaking of Adam Rishon. It's a different one. When they fell from the degree of mochin dechaya, that galgalut einayim, that correction that they made in the first temple, and mingled with all the achap. This is called the Melachim, kings of Dachdat. Afterwards, they returned to build the second temple and broke with the Melachim of Tanhim. By that, they came to the complete shattering, meaning that Israeli nation that achieved correction has now broken and shattered and mingled with all of Babylon. Which Babylon? The Babylon that was within them, which they dragged with them, but they rose above it. Galut einayim above achap. Is that clear? Maybe I can. Let's say this is the whole of Babylon. There's galut einayim here, and this is the achap. Babylon. Now, this group becomes detached. This is Abraham's group. Abraham's group. It began to correct itself. In them, there is also Gulgalta Einaim and a Chab. They correct their Gulgalta Einaim. Correct their Gulgalta Einaim, and this is called Beit, the first temple. Mochin Dechaya. They corrected it. By that, they achieved the end of correction of Gulgalta Ve'einaim. Okay. Now, what do you do now? There's a Chab. So that's stage 1. Now stage 2. The Achab begins to connect to them, to awaken in them. Once they came to Gulgalta Einaim, instead of adding the Achab by rising, they couldn't do it. So they broke. The Gulgalta Einaim and Achab broke. Now the group of Abraham is called the people of Israel. And they broke. So they fell from Mochin Dechaya to Mochin Neshama. That's the ruin of the first temple. And subsequently, the ruin of the second temple. And then they came to a state of zero. No, like the rest of the world. So in that state, they become like these Achab, like the rest of Babylon, except some, they are after the breaking and they are without the breaking. So now we've come to a state where we have all of this Babylon mixed and mingled among them, well, relatively, because there's no mingling as a result of the shattering. It's an artificial mingling, kind of superficial equivalence, but it's not mingling where everyone just becomes kind of erased and there's no trace of any specific one, but everyone is so untraceable in the mixture, because the Achab of Babylon didn't break. They were never in an ascent and then broke. So there's no mixture between them. Now you have Babylon, the current Babylon. The current Babylon. After 3,500 years, we've come to that state. So now you have, I can't even write it as above or below, but you have the people of Israel. It's not the people of Israel. It's they're not even Jews. I don't know what to call it. Okay, well, let's just, for the sake of naming it, the people of Israel, in exile, and the nations of the world, well, nations of the world, Achab, the Bavel, of Bavel. Okay. Is that clear? Yes? So that's now, today. Go ahead. From where did Abraham's group get the Achab when they came out of Babylon?
Because when they were in Babylon, in that state of Babylon, when they emerge from Babylon, they actually leave with all the integration that they had with them, and that's why they also have a chap as well as galut ta'anaim. What did Abraham tell them? How did he ask them to unite? He said, we have a chap among us, and up on top of it, we as if create an umbrella. And that umbrella is galut ta'anaim. You can't build faith above reason, vessels of bestowal, just like that. There are no vessels of bestowal in nature. You build them from within the vessels of reception. What actually exists is only the vessels of reception.
So if they have a chap, why couldn't they perform the correction then? Because they were seemingly already included in the nations of the world, in the chap of Babylon. So why did they have to go through the whole process of mingling so now they can correct them? To begin with, they were mingled with them, included in them.
They corrected themselves as galut ta'anaim only, or the people of Israel, separately. The achab that there is in them is only in order to help the people of Israel build itself. Otherwise, how would they build themselves without having a chap from Babylon, the integration with the Babylonians? Now, they've come to a point where they corrected themselves as galut ta'anaim, as in the world of Nikudim. And they also wanted to correct the chap, but they couldn't. It's like what he tells us, that they started talking to their ego. And since they didn't want to do it but wished to include their narrow selfishness, meaning the lo lishma, this developed the ruin of the first temple, since they wished to extol wealth and power above justice, as other nations. They weren't actually connected to the nations of the world. They had it within them. It began to appear within them. That's called the rich and the officers, the tzdokim. These are the different kinds of achab that have appeared. But that achab of Babylon is not what we're talking about at all. Because that's something that can't be corrected at all. Only in our days now, and also our correction is only joining. Okay? Yeah.
The states where the people of Israel is in the ruin of the second temple, and then they scatter and become exiled in this general achab. What is its role? Why does it happen? What should it do there?
What does it mean to scatter or not to scatter? There's no action in this world that doesn't originate in spirituality. If they've reached a point where they're like all the nations of the world, preferring the externality to the internality, and the internality is buried within them, and it fades away. And most important for them is the exterior. They live for it, and it's the only way they see in front of them. That means that they are among the nations of the world, and there's no difference between them and the others. Yeah.
So it seems like something bad that happens to them, that they disappear among the nations, but there's no coincidence, no chance. So it's like, so
What's the question?
how does this process happen?
Wait, what is the need for their fall from Mochin of Chayada, their personal end of correction, to the level of the world,
Yes.
corporeality, from
Yes.
one world to the other? Yeah. Because now they can begin the correction from Babylon, from the world entirely, from the whole world. Well, I gave a bit of a picture of it here, because there's also the Kabbalists that develop here throughout the process, and the different formations of the Torah, the Pentateuch and the prophets, and then the period of the forefathers and so forth. There's a lot of detail here. But we'll put more and more details on this scheme. Now we're in this state. This is the state of today. That's what we need to correct. And, well, we'll talk about that. This circle here is very problematic.